you for joining us. This is the Bitter Geeks Podcast. This week we have a very special guest. If you're a fan of Zack Snyder's films or the DCEU, thank you for joining us. This is Samantha Win. Samantha, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining us. This is very exciting. Congratulations on the success of Zack Snyder's Justice League and your new short film, Unwelcome.
Yes, thank you. Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Yeah, all very exciting. And so if you want to go right into it, Steph, ready to go?
Yeah, so speaking of your short film, Unwelcome, what was it like to do the behind the camera work as you were both writer and producer? And was it like your idea? Was it Shahab's idea? Or like, how did it come to be?
Well, the idea was very much a collaborative process. We knew that we wanted to shoot something since it was quarantine and everyone was stuck at home. But, I had one of my best friends and Shahab. And so, everyone kind of found their little bubble, especially if you don't have a family that lives with you. You at least had, like most people I found, or hopefully like one or two people that you would see just, to keep sane is what I like to think. But we were just brainstorming things that we could do during the quarantine process and ideas started flowing. And so, Shahab was in the room along with our other producer and my friend Dawn. And between the three of us, we all came up with the story together. And then Shahab and I went off and we wrote it. But the story was a brainstorming session between the three of us that just kept escalating to, and then this happens, and then this happens, and oh my God, what if this happens? Mm-hmm. And it was just a medley of the craziness of our brains.
So who thought of that plot twist? Because when it happened, like I was watching it and I was getting so uncomfortable and I was like, what is going on? And then the twist, and I was like, oh my God.
Same here.
Yes. Oh, I'm so glad to hear that. And I because I know the twist, I forget how awkward it is for my friends seeing it. Mm-hmm. Until the twist is revealed, it's very uncomfortable for them. So that's a good thing. But the shooting process was amazing, and it was difficult wearing the writer-producer hat while performing because, we were trying to have as little number of people out there as possible because of the pandemic. So everyone was tested and we were spaced out, but we also wanted to be responsible and not, just have a bunch of people around. And so I was the makeup department, wardrobe department, location scouting, AD. I was wearing so many hats that it was a lot harder to focus. It's nice just being able to show up to set and everything's done and you just do like your one job. But this time was a harder process for me, and I learned so much through it. So I'm extremely grateful and thankful that it turned out okay, because otherwise that would have been a knock to my confidence.
I think it turned out amazing for the resources that you guys had. Turned out so well. So
yeah, I agree. And watching it, like I personally didn't even think of it as a short film. I thought it looked fantastic, and the way I shot it looked beautiful. And watching it, it's like I was on the edge of my seat, like literally the entire time. And not often do I feel that way. So the fact that you guys were able to pull that off in such a short amount of time, I thought was really impressive. So I thought that was really great.
That means the world to me. Thank you. Yeah, we were pretty lucky. We had a solid team of people. And so everyone pulled their weight and then some. And we had, our directors were amazing, cinematographer, amazing. And they brought all of their stuff to the table for free, which was nice because we're all friends at the same time. So that was extremely useful.
Yeah, of course. So to segue into, as we mentioned, you were part of Zack Snyder's Justice League. You reprised your role as Yubea from Wonder Woman. And so to get into that and your working relationship with the Snyders, just over the course of your working with them, how has your relationship changed with them over the years since you started working with them as a teenager?
Well, it's so funny when I get this question because I only really know my perspective of the relationship because you don't often talk to people about your relationship with them. So I could be way off base and they could be like, she's crazy. But from my point of view, I think that the relationship with the Snyders has definitely evolved. And I feel so grateful to them because I I did start out with them as a teenager. And so I think that the way that they run a set has really shaped me as a performer and an artist, and now filmmaker myself. They are very much the example of what I hope to be someday. And so it's been a cool evolution of getting to work closer and closer with them, because as a stunt double, I'm in a different department, and my boss is the one that works closely with them. So I'd only see them when I was, on set, just for those few interactions. And then the next one is a small role with stunt doubling. And so it's like getting to see them slightly more and a little bit more conversation. And so it was a very slow progression over the course of, I think it's been 10 years now, a little more than 10 years. And it's not like I've noticed one big shift, like all of a sudden one day I like considered them true friends. It was very like a slow progression, just because it's, slowly getting to know people. And now, I don't know, maybe they would think it's weird to hear, I almost feel like they're parents.
A lot of people would feel that way.
Maybe that's weird for them to hear. I have no idea, but they've helped me so much throughout the years, and it's been like one little thing, and then the next thing, and then the next thing. And I think I told Debbie recently that they've continually given me the most exciting day of my life. It's always come from them, and it's always been like the next thing, and then the next thing, and I keep thinking like, oh my God, and then it's the next thing, and I'm like. And I can't even explain my gratitude. And so I feel they're deep in my hearts, and I feel very close to them. Like I said, I don't know their side of things. I like to think it's reciprocal. But the fact that they've given me the opportunities they have is, means the world to me. So I hope it's reciprocated.
I think it's definitely, like, at least from like the audience perspective, like seeing your role in the films over the years, I've definitely noticed, at least as a fan, like seeing you pop up more has always been nice to see. Because I remember in the theater watching Man of Steel for the first time and seeing Carvex show up. I'm like, ooh, she's cool. And then and it always stuck with me in the back of my head. So as you popped up in Wonder Woman, and then and most recently in Zack Snyder's Justice League, where you were given probably the most prominent role of the DC film so far, I think it's very clear how Zack feels about you and how Debbie feels about you, at least on screen, and how they choose to present you. And so I just think it's really cool how they've brought you back, and and as a fan, seeing more and more of you as each film progresses. And I think it's really cool that they've keep bringing you back all these years later.
Thank you. That's what I take away from it too. It's funny because I'm a little bit of a shy person, and I do feel like in certain environments, Zack is also maybe a bit of a shy person. And so we don't actually like talk buddy that much, but I feel like we're close. And so I feel like nervous and awkward around him still. And so I don't know what it's like on the flip side, but I do think, given the evolution and progression of things, that there's a deep friendship there that I'm very grateful for. But I mean, yeah, and he wrote a letter for me for my green card when I was immigrating here. And nice. Debbie is the one who introduced me to casting directors, who got me agents and managers. And so they've been such a big part of my career that means a lot to me.
Yeah, that's great. So in working with them, one of the things you did, not the most recently, but a few years back, you worked on Snow Steam Iron with them. And so I just wanted to know how that process came about, how, did Zack contact you about that, and how that role developed as, he was informing you about the project itself.
Well, it was an out of the blue call one day. I didn't really know that he was planning on doing it for a while. But yeah, I got a phone call from him one day, and he explained the project to me, and then asked if I would be Lin Wu in it. And I think I was, playing it somewhat cool on the phone, but when I hung up afterwards, I was like, ah, and I started crying. It'd been a dream of mine to be able to work with him more as an actress in that capacity. And so when given the opportunity, it just meant so much to me. I was overwhelmed with emotion. And I didn't think that would get back to him, but my ex-husband at the time, told him that I just started crying after, and then I got super embarrassed. But it was a dream come true, you know, to get to work with such an artist and one of your idols in that kind of capacity. It was an honor, and especially given the fact that most people that were working on it with him were friends and family. Like one of his sons was holding the snow machine, and his daughter was the makeup artist, and one of his executive producers was, you know, wetting down the street and handing out paper towels. It was very much everyone was there to support Zack and his vision and get it done. And so I was really honored to be a part of that. It's funny, I feel more honored and special when I can help out for free instead of being paid to be somewhere, because then they know like I'm there because I love and support them, and I want to do it. So I was grateful to be able to do that.
Great. And how was the process of filming on an iPhone like compared to filming with normal film cameras?
So freeing. The turnaround is so much quicker because all you do is press play. But it was kind of comical in ways, because I remember this one shot when I was picking up that butcher's knife, and it was just a close up of my hand, and Zack had this tiny little dolly track. So there was like a little phone with a little handle, and he was wheeling it on this little dolly track, and it just felt so ridiculous that it made for a really fun shoot in that regard. But also he could get so close because, you know, the camera's only this big and the lens is that big. So it was a really unique experience, but also inspiring. And since I've attempted to shoot things on the iPhone myself, none of which that I've released because, you know, it's a learning curve. But yeah, it was an awesome experience. The one thing that I wouldn't have thought was that cameras or phone cameras can overheat. So that was probably the only delay, did have to switch out the phones a few times because they were overheating just from so much use. So
yeah, so you guys are bringing it on, that's why.
I like to think so.
So rumor has it that the cheongsam was that yours, like the wardrobe that you're wearing, that dress, and how much input creatively did you have on that film?
On the acting side of things, you know, of course, as an actress, you get to create your own internal life, and there were things that I do that maybe weren't scripted that he would shoot, like the sitting in the street crying, and the poster shot where there was like the outline of a body beside. None of that was scripted or planned. There were just things that kind of presented themselves, and, you know, he wanted to capture the moment. So in that regard, I'd have a little bit of sway, but I can't take any credit for the wardrobe and costume design. Stephanie Porter was the one who picked it out, and it looked absolutely gorgeous. I have no style myself, so I completely credit that to her and to Zack for the design of it. When it comes to that, I didn't have any input on that, nor would I have wanted to, because I was in excellent hands already. So why would I want to mess that up? But no, unfortunately, that rumor is busted. It was not mine.
So over the course of your career, was there a conscious choice when you decided to move from stunt work to acting, or was that sort of a natural progression?
It was very much a conscious choice, and I think a more difficult one than people might expect or anticipate as well. Mostly because of the fears that you create for yourself in your own mind. There's especially when you've worked on the biggest films that exist, Man of Steel, to get to work with that level of people, that level of artist. It's like the stunt people are one department, and acting is a whole other world. Usually, just because you've done stunts doesn't mean you have any sort of in with casting directors. They're completely separate. So you can get to the top of one, but then when you want to go to that world, you've got to start where everyone else does. And so there's this massive fear that once you leave here, you know, no one here can really help you anymore, because they can recommend you for stunt work, but they have no sway with casting. And so it's it's a scary thing to tell people I don't do stunts anymore, because then they stop calling. But then if they stop calling and you're now on this path, and it's very difficult to start making money as an actress.
Mm-hmm.
So then when you're in that in-between phase and you don't know anything else, because it's kind of all I've done was stunts and commercials, and it's always been in the industry. So it was terrifying to be in that limbo phase where I'm like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to do it. But in order to do it, I have to kind of tell people that I'm not doing stunt work anymore. Otherwise, I won't have time for acting if I'm just doing stunts. And also, I will be seen as a stunt person. And I don't know if that's something that I've made up in my mind or something that truly exists. I don't want to say that casting directors have anything against stunt people. I don't know what the process is like for them, but I can imagine if I were a casting director and it were between two actors, and say they were equal in every regard, but one of them, this is all they do, this is what they want, this is everything they do in their life supports it. And then one has a great career where they already make so much money doing something else, they just also want to do this. I might be more inclined to give it to the one that's like, they put all their eggs in the basket and that's what they were. So I could have made it up in my mind, but regardless, it was a very conscious decision. That was a scary time.
Yeah. So continue on to that. So was your path through acting, like, I know you've done stage work, like, how is that different from TV and film? Like, is that something you wanted to do to go into acting, or like, what was it?
I think the stage work was more a way to prove to myself that I can really do it, because they say that theater is the hardest thing you can do. You can do a scene 15 times, you can have 15 takes of it on camera. If you flub a line or if you mess up, you forget something, you can just do it over. But you can't do that on the stage because everyone is watching you, expecting the show to go on. So I think it was a way of testing myself and making sure that I was genuinely prepared for and have earned the right to be hired as an actress. I can just be especially hard on myself. I don't think that someone needs to do theater in order to earn it or deserve it by any means, but it was for my own confidence in it. It was a way of growing, a new experience for me. I've always loved performing, even in martial arts. I've performed with Steph on live stages before, and there's a thrill of it. And it's just a different experience. And so if I could translate that kind of pressure into my acting work and know that I can handle it, then I'll have confidence. I'll feel like I have the right to be there. And people feel that. They can feel when you're scared, and they can feel when you've got it and you know that you can handle it. And so I want to be the confident type.
It's amazing. I really respect your grind.
Oh.
I really do. So moving on from that, do you think
that go along with it? No.
Oh my gosh. So do you think like writing and producing is something you want to do more, or like, have you ever thought about directing, or do you think you're just going to stick on like the acting path?
I have, and especially the more I practice it, the more I'm falling in love with all sides of storytelling, but it's also not something I'm rushing into. I do like to be prepared as much as I can for things that I venture into. You can't always help that, but if I can, I want to learn as much as I can now. Take more acting roles, watch the people around me, learn, make short films, make iPhone films that I'll never release because I think they're terrible and don't want anyone to see them. I want to do a lot of failing quietly first. Before I step out into the world as a writer, producer, potentially director. I just don't know enough about the technical side of things yet. I think there are so many tools that you can use to effectively tell a story and so many different ways of telling a story. I don't know what I don't know yet. And I think I just want to learn more. So I have more tools available to me when I get to that point. But for now, I'm extremely happy to be working as an actress.
That's great. So what was it like going from Patty Jenkins' Wonder Woman to Zack Snyder's Justice League, and how far apart was the shooting for those two films?
They were very close together. It's hard to remember. I think as soon as I wrapped on Wonder Woman, I think I stayed behind after wrap for a couple weeks because principal photography, yeah, they had overlapped. So principal photography had started on Justice League already. So there was an overlap where I stayed and went right into Justice League. Then I got to go home for a little bit and then fly back out to the UK to do another few months of it. So they were kind of back to back. And everyone wants to know about the differences and experiences. They were very different experiences. And of course I'm biased because I've worked with Zack so much and I love the Snyders so much. And I know so much of the crew because he uses the same people so often in every department. If I'm thinking if he likes you and you're a positive person on set, he likes to keep that around. And I value that because it means that it's very family friendly, positive work environment all the time. So of course I'm biased towards that because it feels like family and all the familiar faces are there. I go to work and I'm just, seeing friends and getting to catch up with people and just having a great time. Wonder Woman was a bit different for me because I didn't know very many of the cast and crew, and out of the Amazons, I didn't know any of them prior to the shooting. I knew some of the stunt women because having the stunt background. So it was just a very different experience for me. The training was very much a special part of the filming and a necessity because that is where we were able to bond and to grow with each other and get to know each other. I feel like you truly get to know someone when you're struggling with them. When you're both in pain together, there's like a pain bond that you form. And so we did that on Wonder Woman, but I wasn't as in the know with things because I couldn't, hear the sneak tidbits from my friends that were, in different departments. I just didn't know as many people. So it was a different experience. Hard to compare, but I value and treasure both experiences just as much. I'd like to work with Patty more and be able to be more part of the process and see what it's like. But on Justice League, I was just a little bit more involved and knew more people. It was probably.
Gotcha. And what was it like working with all those Amazons? And did it motivate you to really push your abilities up?
It did. And that's almost a downfall for me because I can get a little, not competitive, but obsessive with my own. If I know there's a goal or a task at hand, like I need to be the best I can be. And sometimes if the point of it, yes, an Amazonian is strong and I'm there to represent that, but also there's the acting side of things and there's just more to think about. And when I get so laser focused on the training, that's like all I'm thinking about and all I'm obsessing about. So I felt like I became more of an athlete when I went there, instead of, stepping into my actresshood. I was going back to athlete mode, but it was super fun to do that. The training was intense. I pushed myself. I was probably the strongest, not that I'd ever been, but probably the second strongest that I'd ever been in my life. I think when I was competing in wushu, that was just a different level of, and Steph knows, a different level of training where, some of it's probably not even good for your body, but it makes you so incredibly strong. And when you're that close with the people you're training with, they can push you past the point that's probably like legally acceptable. But you're grateful for it, and I am just truly grateful for it. In this setting, it was more structured. Everything is more regulated, and there's proper rest and recovery time. So it was great. I was super strong. The horseback riding was the funnest part for me because it's not something that I got to train in prior to, and so I took a lot of joy in that. But training process was amazing.
Yeah, the irony of you loving horseback riding was that your character died under one.
That's very true.
I know. You actually don't see me on a horse for either of the films. I did so much training on it, and they're like,
yeah, well, you got to go backwards with Connie on that horse, And then
true.
yeah.
It was a green horse. So that's why in my mind, I'm like, they didn't let me on.
I've that scene at the end, I can't believe it was cut from the theatrical, but like when I saw it in Zack Snyder's Justice League at the very end of it, I was like, oh my God, like you guys went there, you and Connie went there for the kill shot. And I was like, okay, that's it. Goodbye.
I very much so felt the same way watching it.
Oh, thank you. It was so fun to film. The running in the corridor was probably and that was one that was also cut from the theatrical version, was my favorite to film, just because when you're dressed as an Amazonian and you're running down the middle of an aisle between other Amazonians, there's something that just feels so superhero about it that I was like, look at me, Mom. Like, that was the moment I wanted my parents to see.
Yeah, that was amazing. Like the whole when like the first trailer for the Amazon came out where it was like Darkness and Mascara, show them your fear. We have no fear. That sent chills.
Yep. Yeah. Every time I watch it, very much so the same way. Like it's probably one of my favorite moments of the entire movie. That whole sequence.
Yeah. So imagine how happy I was just seeing that fleshed out on screen. So happy that your vision got realized. Like everyone's hard work. We can now see it. So it's amazing.
Thank you. Yeah. And the women were all wonderful there too. Maybe because we'd had more chance to bond on Wonder Woman as well. The ones who did transfer over onto Justice League, we knew each other more by then. So especially Doutzen and Anne were the two that I really bonded with, and we had more pictures together, and it was just so much fun. And they look amazing in those sequences too. So yeah, I felt very proud watching it.
That's awesome. So speaking of kind of all that, there's been like ongoing debate about like regarding Zack Snyder's portrayal of women in his films. And like, I know you've worked on the beginning since like Sucker Punch, and like, that's been like one of like the biggest thing out there. So like, what are your opinions on that?
That's bullshit. I think, I can see people can look at something from the outside and draw their own conclusions. So I'm not saying anything is invalid or anyone is, dumb for thinking that. People, of course, always have their reasons for thinking what they do. I just think perhaps they're misunderstanding the intentions behind things, which plays a big factor. I think that it's evident from something like 300 to the Amazons and Justice League that, and this is not a conversation I've had with Zack, but it's something that I see in all aspects of his work. And I've heard him talking about, and you can just tell he appreciates like the human body as a whole, man or woman. Like a strong physique is something I think he really appreciates and admires, and it's likes to present to the world as a good example. He works out a lot himself too. His office was half gym, half office. And, I think there's something that speaks to your work ethic and your inner strength and your commitment if you can achieve something like that. And so I think he just really values a strong human body, and he's not afraid to show it. I don't think that that's sexualized in any way. I think whether it's like a dancer's body or the human form or figure or 300 like hulking man, I think it's just the human body that he can appreciate and knows how to capture so well. I mean, we've all seen his action sequences. That's a huge strength of his. And so I don't think it's odd or weird that, he showcases that in his films when, that is a strength that people appreciate. So, and Sucker Punch at its time was one of the first where it was a totally female cast that was all doing action. And I remember so much of the interviewing and talk while we were filming it was about how it's so rare that we get to work with so many women. It was, 5 female leads, 4 female stunt doubles, and we actually got to be around each other. On films prior to that, especially from the stunt perspective, there would be one woman in the movie who maybe got to do action. So there'd only ever be one female stunt person or one stunt double, and you'd be working with all of the men. And so what was so special about that was that we were all working with each other. They were like women that we knew of because we knew they were the other stunt doubles that work all the time. but no one had actually really gotten to work together. But now that there's a film where there's multiple women, we can finally work together instead of separately. And yeah, so I think he's a trailblazer when it comes to empowering women in films and showcasing them in a strong way that has helped shift culture into creating more female-centric parts and films. So I'm very much on that side of it. I know people could say that I'm biased, and I am, I can't deny that, but I think I am for good reason, because I've gotten to see so much of the behavior over the years, and he has nothing but love for all people and respect for all people. And, you know, I've only felt empowered and feel like a daughter, not sexualized by any means. That's so weird for me to even say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's something like, as an audience member, something that, you know, of course I could say I'm biased because I'm a fan of Zack's work, but that's something that's been clear to me as a fan and as an audience member across his works, is that like I've never felt like he's sexualizing anybody or being like, okay, well, here's, you know, this, you know, glorified shot of a woman's body that's totally unnecessary, totally uncalled for. Like I feel like he films and treats, like you said, like each like male, female character in the same exact way. So like, as like we talk a lot about, you know, in the podcast here about like, you know, the way he films, like, you know, Henry Cavill in his scenes, you know, he's shirtless for much of these films. And you can definitely see how, like, it's not just of like, oh, he's glorifying the female over the male. Like, it's very much so, like you said, like, and it's made very clear to a lot of us here that, you know, it's very much so empowering both genders in a lot of ways and showing off like how great the human body can really be. And I think that's really cool that comes off in my mind so clearly across on the screen, and that it's not just something that like, oh, so much of Hollywood is just like glorifying, you know, the female body, and it's just like, okay, well, here we go again. So it's refreshing to see that in Zack's work that comes across so clear, at least to us.
Yeah, because I think if anyone has actually met him or worked with him or sat down with him, you would see that he's not that type of person at all. So that is the one thing I really do love clearing up for people, because it's so counter to who he actually is as a person. I mean, he has 8 children, and everyone that he works so closely with is so family oriented. He's such a respectful, nice, generous person that it's like, to have him painted as that is it's so wrong. But, you know, people will know over time, and just got to fight the good fight. And yeah.
And to kind of go back to, you know, the DC universe a little bit, you've now played Kryptonian and an Amazonian. Of the two, which did you find the most interesting and or challenging to play?
I wish I was just so young when I was a Kryptonian. I wish I knew more at that time. I do think that would have been the more interesting race to play, though. Especially given that they have been bred to be a certain way. And emotion is not really something that their culture experiences much, or that they've been bred to follow very much. It's not so much of that, especially General Zod's army was bred for that reason. And so I think from an acting standpoint, it'd be more interesting to get to play with that a bit more. And the costumes were just so magnificent. I wouldn't mind jumping back into those again. It did take 45 minutes to be able to pee in those costumes, though. So that was the one downside that people don't really think about, is it's so cool on, but it's very tricky to get off and to unzip the right amount of layers in order to use the restroom.
Oh man, what was it like to work with Amy Adams on Man of Steel? I like throwing Lois Lane into a cell. At first I was like, okay, that's Sam that's on screen, and she's throwing Amy Adams, who's playing the iconic Lois Lane, into a jail cell. I was like, mind blown.
I've worked with a lot of other big actors since then, but she's made such an impression on me, even though I didn't work with her for that long of a time. She's such a nice and genuine person, always like singing to herself, or like talking right up until they call action. She'll literally be like telling a story and be so happy about this, and they'll be like action, and she'll be like, oh, and then go right into it. And I'm like, wow, like, you know, some actors need to be in their zone, or so they'll need like more space, and that can come across to some people as being more distant, but like it's necessary, it's their job, but she doesn't require that. And so she is just so lovely and positive and bubbly to everybody. I know I overheard her talking to another stunt woman who I think she just met that day as well. And they were talking about horses, and she's like, I'd love to come to your farm and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, wow, she's just such a regular person, in that she has invited herself to spend time with this woman and her horses because they both love horses. I'm like, it's just so lovely. So she was a fantastic human being, obviously a fantastic actress. I would love to get to work with her again. Anyone who can just create happiness on set and that kind of positive environment, I'm a huge fan of, and she does that in spades.
So switching tracks for a minute, what does it mean to you to be one of the growing number of Asian Americans / Canadians faces in Hollywood? Like, have you noticed a shift in dynamics since you started in the industry? And to represent Sandra Oh, one of the famous Asian Canadians out in Hollywood.
Is she Canadian?
She is. She's from Ontario. How did you not know this?
How did I not know this? I love her so much more even now.
So next project to get you guys to work together, right?
I would, oh my God, I would be over the moon. Ever since Sideways, I think I've just been in love with her work. She's such an amazing actress. How did I not know that? Wow. But it's a huge honor. I consider it a huge honor to be, you know, slowly growing in popularity amongst that group. You know, it's something that, especially nowadays, is becoming more and more important representation, more and more at the forefront of, you know, culture and discussion. And it would be an honor to me to be, you know, a voice or a face of our community. I feel like I have somewhat of a unique perspective, having come from, you know, Canadian Caucasian culture as well as Chinese culture. And so, yeah, I guess I just feel like I'd have a lot I'd want to say and share with the world. And I feel like I can understand both perspectives, and I hope to be a bridge to that for people who don't understand. I hope that I could, you know, help them understand certain aspects of it, coming from an empathetic, you know, non-judgmental place. I'd like to be a part of that. And so bring on more questions or panels or interviews about it, because I want to be a part of it. But yeah, I can see how it's shifted in the industry as well. There are more, I want to say, regular roles coming up for Asian Americans, Asian Canadians now. I feel like before it was always assassin or ninja or doctor, or they're, you know, playing into the stereotypes. But now a lot of the casting breakdowns even say open ethnicity. It could go to anyone. And so the most recent casts I've been a part of, it has been a conscious choice to cast in diversity and to not have certain ethnicities just play into their stereotypes. It is very much a conscious decision now, whereas before the fight was just having certain ethnicities included, and now it is putting them in appropriate roles to where we can see everybody equally now. We're not stereotyping everybody into the roles that we have traditionally seen them in. And so it's come a long way, and I think it's still going a long way. I'm very excited that I get to live in this time, because that means that I get to reap the benefits of my predecessors' hard work and fighting for it. And now I get to pick up the good fight for hopefully the next generation. And it's just lovely. I love human beings, and I love what we're capable of. And especially coming out of last year, we're getting to see some of the benefits and rewards from it.
I love that. I love that. And I can't wait to see you just light the world on fire. It's gonna be great. You know, I've been a huge supporter of yours. So
No.
Love it, love it. So you've been a part of high fantasy / action superhero type productions across television and film. Was that genre of media always an interest of yours to work in? And what other genres would you want to explore in future projects?
Oh man, so many. Something from the actress standpoint that's always caught my eye are biopics, just because you get to dive so deep into character work. Everything from, accents to physicality to costumes. Everything is a conscious choice and a craft. You very much have to craft yourself wholly into another person. And so that would be something eventually I would love to experience, instead of just, bringing myself into a role, like genuinely trying to craft everything into an already set human being, a fully fleshed out human being with a full life that has already existed. That would be the greatest challenge and honor that I could think of. But also like narrative heavy projects, like David Fincher projects. It would be amazing to work with someone like him, where there are so many minute details to your performance and to the story that make such a big impact. Everything from a cadence in the way you speak to a pace of a scene to like a tone of your voice, like all of those other little things that you don't experiment with as much in the superhero fantasy world. I would love to experience that. And then directors that I knew previously who are now big directors, like David Leitch and Sam Hargrave, director of Extraction, and then director of David Leitch, Atomic Blonde, Deadpool 2, upcoming Bullet Train. He's huge now. The very first film that I ever got to work on was not a great movie, but it was called King of Fighters, based off of the video game.
I remember that movie.
And Sam Hargrave was one of the leads, and also, he was one of the leads, and Dave Leitch was one of the leads and second unit director and stunt coordinator on it. And so that was the first movie I ever got to work on. And it was so amazing to watch their career since then, and to have caught up with them a couple times since. And I just think it would be a really cool full circle moment, amazing experience to get to work with them now in their new capacities and my new capacity, to be able to, work with each other in a different light. I'm a big fan of working with friends and just nice, positive people, and both of them are that. So that would be an honor as well.
That's awesome. So you saying watching Sam Hargraves and David Leitch in their career, that's like me watching you just take off. I just feel so much joy. I was talking about it with Cliff earlier. I'm just so glad, so happy, so proud that the grind is finally paying off, and you've still got ways to go. And I'm just so excited to see where you're going to take yourself.
Thank you so much. I don't feel any different. I just feel like I'm working hard as usual and just living life. But thank you. I am extremely grateful, because it was a terrifying time not knowing, what you can really make of yourself. And I do feel like if I died tomorrow, knock on wood, hopefully that will not happen, but at least I've, gotten to work with Zack in this capacity. And at least I've gotten to do some of the things that have been on my bucket list. There's still a lot more, but I feel super grateful for this, because this would have made my dream come true. Even if I never got another part after this, I do feel like my dream has come true. So very grateful.
So to kind of piggyback on part of that conversation, so you'd mentioned, David Fincher, David Leitch. Is there anyone, actor, writer, director, or even stunt coordinator, that you would want to work with in the future?
Well, those individuals, it'd be, obviously it would be really amazing to work with Christopher Nolan. I'm it would be, as if that's some sort of surprise, but no, it would be amazing to work with Christopher Nolan I know technically I've worked with him on Man of Steel, but I'd never met him, and I of course wasn't a part of the creative process for that film. So to work closer with him would be amazing. He has groundbreaking films. I think he's brilliant, and I hear wonderful things about him from the people around me. So that would be a true honor. I would always want to work with Zack. If I could work with him the rest of my career, I would be an extremely happy camper. Also, some other friends that I know that are on their paths to becoming a director. I don't know where they're at right now, but a good friend, Guillermo Grispo, he was responsible for the fight design of the Kingsman, or Kingsman Secret Service. And he's just such a brilliant artist in like creating new camera angles and new ways of doing things. I think he's on his way and very shortly going to be directing, and I would love to work with him in that capacity. I've only worked with him while we were both in the stunt department, but yeah, it's more about personalities for me. I don't know if that's wise as an artist, but you know, I value my time on this planet, and I want to make sure that if I commit myself to months on a project with people, that I at least have a good time on it, and that, you know, I don't want to spend my whole life being miserable working with amazing people that I don't actually like. So yeah, a few friends. Anyone that I've known prior that is now directing, I want to work with them. I want to see them in their new light and shine and be proud of them and all that. I guess that's not a creatively exciting response.
No, let's manifest. We're going to manifest. Manifest. These things are going to happen. So that about sums up our major questions. Would you be up for like lightning round questions? Kind of like on the spot?
Sure. I don't know how good I'll be at it. I have had my coffee though, so hopefully it's slightly better. Oh, and Aaron Sorkin, of course. How could you not want to speak Aaron Sorkin's words? That would be so fun. And because there is a rhythm to it that I would love to learn and not master. I don't think anyone can master it. Well, maybe some people. Al Pacino, not me. But I would love to attempt to and to be there for that. Anyways, yes, I'm down for lightning round questions.
Yes. Okay, let's start with an easy one. Okay, between Carvex and Euboa, who do you think would win a fight based strictly on combat skills alone?
Ooh, I think Ubia.
Ubia. Okay.
Yeah.
That was my guess.
I think Carvex would have a technological advantage, but I think Ubia would do it. She's just stronger, better human being too, I think.
So as I mentioned, you played, Amazon Kryptonian. Are there any other characters in the DC universe that you would like the opportunity to play at some point?
If Arrow were continuing, I think Beatrice would have been a super fun character to get to continue in the DC universe. New leader of the Ninth Circle. Yes, please. But also, any superhero would be amazing. A Catwoman kind of, that would be amazing. Like a siren of some sort. But yes.
Zatanna, maybe.
You know what? I'll take what I can get it.
Okay, next question. Since you were Kristen Stewart's double in Breaking Dawn Part 2, who do you think is the stronger vampire? Your character Mallory in Unwelcome or Bella Swan?
Ooh. I was one of her stunt doubles. I do want to say that. I could not take credit for the whole thing. Another girl did most of it for it, but I did have the pleasure of doing it as well. But I think Mallory, because she's more wild and crazy and like unpredictable because she's so new and experienced. I think, at least in the world we've set up in Unwelcome, when you're starting out, it's not like the awkward deer who has just been born. It's like you're more crazy and chaotic and scary when you're untrained, because it's like a trance that you go into as opposed to the learning curve. So I think the learning curve goes opposite in them. So I think Mallory would win. She would tear Bella to shreds.
Of all the sets you worked on, which one was the most fun to work on?
Ooh. Every movie I work on, I feel like this is the most fun I've ever had. And I constantly feel like that. That would be A tricky one. But I do think that Sucker Punch was probably my favorite, most treasured, because of the people, because everything was new to me. So every day I was learning something, and I got to experience so many different sides of the production process for the first time. And I was the newest stunt person on the team, and I was aware of that, and everyone else was aware of that. So I got to get away with things that I was messing up on. Like, I wouldn't be punished too harshly because I didn't know better, but also I got to ask questions and learn and watch, and I had the most to learn of everyone because I didn't know anything. So that process was so fun. And then the production design, and a lot of the team that was on Sucker Punch is still working with Zack today. So it was the first time I got to meet all of these lovely people, and they were all lovely people. I started out in this bubble of positivity. So yeah, Sucker Punch. Sorry, I'm ruining your lightning round because I'm babbling on. I'll give
No, you're good. You're good.
It's good. I'm loving this. Speaking of stunts, the hardest one you've ever done.
Shoot, not.
You've got some pretty good stunts, so.
Yeah. I would actually say the hardest one was probably the jump off of the horse in Wonder Woman, where the Amazonian lifts me and I jump off the horse and then do the spinning move in the air. Just because the wardrobe, it was hard to bend my knees at the angle I needed to. And then also there was something on the day that was just so difficult about the rhythm with the stunt rigger pulling. I don't know if I couldn't get my knee high enough, and so I needed like different timing. But that one was just really tricky. I remember feeling most frustrated with myself on that stunt because every take I wanted to get it right for Damon Caro, the second unit director, and he'd be like, "Yeah, just the timing on this," and I'm like, "I got it, yeah." And I'd be so focused, and then I still wouldn't get it, and I was like beating myself up. So that was the hardest.
I want to say that amazing. It turned out amazing. And I've been on set work. Like, I've watched Chris Mark and like on like the Amazon or the Boys, sorry. And like I've seen him do the stunt work and all that. And like I knew what was put into stunt work. I just never knew how hard it was. So hats off to you guys. That sequence turned out amazing. So
thank you. Yeah.
Of all of your projects, what was the most challenging across the board that you've done?
I think Snow, Steam, Iron, because it was my first time getting to experience that kind of emotion on film, not just theater. Because theater, you experience that emotion, like how much time you have to prepare, and then once you're in it, you stay in it, and then you're done after it's done. But it was very emotionally tiring to turn it on and off so many times throughout the day, 4 days in a row. So that part of it was something new to me, that it was hard. I had like a splitting headache from 2 hours into the day. Because, if you're like crying and then you stop crying, sometimes you get a headache. But if you're crying and you stop crying, then you have a headache, and then you need to cry again. You need to stop crying. And then like it's a worse headache, and then you do it again and it's like worse. And then by the end of the day, my head felt like it wanted to explode. And I was like, wow, like actors will film emotional scenes. I thought of horror movies where sometimes it's like the actress is crying throughout the whole movie. I'm like, man, that's a really bad headache. But so that was the most challenging for me, but most fun because now I know how better to prepare myself.
Favorite production you've ever done?
Favorite production? Maybe Army of the Dead.
Ooh,
that's all I'm allowed to say. But production design. It's not a spoiler that there are zombies in the movie. So that's super fun. It was so fun. That would be my favorite production.
So we have the new Mortal Kombat movie out later this month, and with Melina being played by Sissy Stringer, but Katana isn't in it. Would you like to reprise that role if the opportunity came up?
Yes. Yeah, of course. I mean, it's such an iconic character. It's one that I grew up with and that I've gotten to experience before. And who, like, genuinely as a human being, I like what she embodies. I like that she has the elegance of being, you know, royalty and a princess, and she's the good sister of the two, but she's so badass. And then with the fan work, you know, I've gotten to experience a tiny bit of performing with fans in Wushu before for performances. So yeah, it would be something I would be honored to take up, especially with that cast who are amazing, strong human beings, and to, you know, represent the Asian American community or Asian Canadian film community more. I would love that.
Amazing. And lastly, what is the first thing you want to do when this pandemic is over?
Oh, go to a theme park. Yeah, actually, it just reopened here. So, but I want to go to the theme park with the full experience would be my goal. Yeah, I hear they're like running a roller coaster, and then, you know, they're social distancing, but also the next roller coaster will have nobody on it because they like air out the seats and disinfect, and then so it's just taking longer, and, you know, a lot of the games I think are still closed down, but yeah, carnival, theme park, something like that. Nice. Eat bad food in a crowded place.
And my wife and I very much so feel the same way. That's funny because that was the last thing we did before pandemic, and that's the thing that we've been waiting to do the entire pandemic. So I very much agree with you there.
And I hear you're in California, right?
Yes, San Diego.
Yes. Okay. So Magic Mountain, I think, is the one that just opened. So.
Oh yeah, that's definitely one that's definitely on my list of the ones to go to once everything is all cleared up.
Yes.
Wait a minute. I'm just remembering, Nick. Don't you have a thing going on in VERO? You guys met each other on VERO way back in the day, maybe.
Okay, so I want to say this maybe like 2 or 3 years ago. Samantha, you made a post about going to some con somewhere, and of course, me being from San Diego, I had asked you like, "Oh, hey, do you ever plan on coming down to San Diego for Comic-Con?" And that at that point, I said, "Oh, not this year, but if I ever come down, you know, we could meet up or anything at some point." Yeah. And of course, in the back of my mind, I'm like, "Oh yeah, that's cool. Like, probably never gonna happen, but you know, it's cool that you responded to me." And so it's funny when this opportunity came up. I'm like, "Wow, that's pretty cool." This, even though it's not a convention, you know, it's kind of came full circle that way. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, it did. Oh, that's so neat. I love that. Yeah, I haven't been to Comic-Con since then. And now everything's online currently. So it's, yeah, this would have been a year, I think, where I would have gone. But unfortunately, the pandemic, yeah.
So kind of wrap things up. So where can people follow you on social media, and what projects do you have in the works that we can look forward to? Speaking of cons, you know, Justice Cons next week. And of course, you have Army of the Dead coming out.
Yep. My Twitter handle is at sam.antha.win. I'm on VERO at Samantha Win. You can find me on Facebook as well and Twitter. But yeah, next project's coming out. Well, Justice Con is going to be next weekend. That's going to be super fun. There will be, I don't know if the whole panel has been announced, so maybe I shouldn't say, but I will be a part of it in some capacity for some panel. Also, you can look forward to upcoming, you know, marketing stuff for Army of the Dead, which will be out in select theaters May 14th and on Netflix May 21st. And also a really nifty short film that I just wrapped called Loss Prevention, directed by Houston Yang. Daniel Bernhardt and myself are the leads in it. And I think it's going to be super cool. And Houston is one to look out for. So I think everyone should look out for his directorial debut with Loss Prevention.
Amazing. Can't wait for that. Well, thank you, Sam, for being here.
Thank you so much. It was great talking to you.